Hello, 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 and welcome to Coffee with Clients. We are so excited to be here. We're going to be diving into what I consider to be a hot topic, definitely among my client base, and even something that's personal and dear to me, and something that I have found a challenge during my personal health journey. And I think that everyone here is going to be enlightened today. So Kelly, I want you to come on and greet the people and introduce yourself.
Well, hello, everybody. I am so excited to be here. As Yolanda said, I'm Kelly Kilcullen. I am an Optavia health coach, and I love the Life Book. And I also love Element 23. And I will tell you that with my clients, this is probably between Element 4 and 23 is the most popular place I send my clients, because I really feel like if we can get a handle on these two and the mental aspects of health, we can succeed. And many of you in your journey probably figured out early on that, oh my gosh, mentally, we have to be in a space to be ready to get healthy, right? Can anybody relate to that? So, has anyone ever said, yeah, I'll do that when life isn't so hectic and crazy, or when things just settle down a little bit, I'll handle that or get after that? And maybe it's just me, but if you have ever said one of those things, put me in the chat. One thing I'm excited about today is we're here to learn and understand strategies to maintain internal stability despite what the world throws at us. Because don't you know, every day it's going to throw something at us. And I think a lot of times in our health journey, we don't realize what we're missing in our optimal health puzzle. And a lot of times that is mindset. So I'm going to share a quote from Dr. A and then turn it back over to you, Yolanda. So Dr. A, love that, the man, the myth, the legend, right? He says, spend as much time in the mental gym as you do in the physical gym. So thank you for joining us today to spend some time in the mental gymnasium.
That's so good. That is so good. Spending some time in the mental gymnasium. And I think that is so good, Kelly, to start off with, because Element Chapter 3 in particular, specifically, the theme of Element Chapter 3 is to manage your thoughts and emotions, to manage your thoughts and emotions. It is our responsibility to do that. And it is so directly tied to our personal health in ways that I was even getting enlightened. I've read this before, but I think I got enlightened even a little bit more when it was talking about this, managing your thoughts and your emotions. So I really believe that in order for us to do that, we have to be fully aware of our emotions. And I think the challenge that we have with managing our emotions is not being aware of what they actually are. Sometimes I think that we put certain emotions into certain categories, and we may not even really be feeling what we think we're feeling because we're not really processing it. We're not really aware of it. I was thinking, I was really fascinated by this because I was having a semi heated discussion with one of my children. And I have young adult children. If you have young adult children, you can probably relate a little bit. So a semi heated discussion over messaging. And we were having a discussion about one particular thing that she feels is an emotion. And I don't know that to be an emotion, it's a choice and certain things or whatever. But that just tells me that sometimes we're just not even really aware of our emotions, that we really have to get to know what it is that we're feeling, because when we know what we're feeling, and we know what, our thought process, it leads into our feelings, and we are very aware of what we're feeling, then we can come up with how we're going to deal with or address it. Sometimes that the term emotionalism is actually thrown out as it's an actual negative thing. It is not negative to have emotions. It is normal to have emotions. It is healthy to have emotions. as I was reading about it, it was saying that when fear is an emotion, imagine if something of danger was coming upon you and you just don't want to have fear. How would you be alerted? How would you be warned? You know, when you lose someone, it is not normal to not grieve them. That is a normal emotion. And so so being aware of that, being aware that that is a normal thing, then we cannot feel bad about it, because what happens is when we begin to react as a result of our emotions, we begin to shame ourselves. We begin to take on self-guilt. We begin to allow what we think people feel about us when we're in that space of emotions, or our emotions, and understanding that there's positive and there's negative emotions. So there's a differentiation there. We're doing an overview here, but when we don't have a full awareness of what those emotions are, we do not respond to them correctly. So it really begins with actually identifying what the emotion is that you're dealing with, and then differentiating whether it's a negative or a positive emotion. Like they were talking, the book is talking about, yes, sadness is a real emotion that we have, and it's normal. We should have it. Grief, we should have, but depression, we should not. That's a negative emotion. So being able to be aware and differentiate what the emotion is you have, it gives you the ability to actually know what to do with the emotion, how to channel the emotion. I also love that one of the things that I read is that when we are experiencing an emotion, it typically lasts about 90 seconds, about 90 seconds. And that was so intriguing to me. So when it comes to emotions, sometimes our emotions, if they're not managed well, and we have to be aware in order to be able to manage them, if our emotions are not managed well, then we're triggered to do things that we should not do. And so we are going to talk, if you read the element in the book yourself, it does not talk a lot about what I know most people is like, oh my gosh, I can finally figure out how to get a handle on this emotional eating thing. The book really doesn't talk specifically much about eating, but that's just one of the actions that happens as a result of how people respond to their emotions. So we will cover that just a bit. But when we're aware of the emotions that we have, when we know what they are and we know how to handle them, and I'm thinking about that 90-second thought, that any emotion that we have typically lasts for about 90 seconds. So I only have 90 seconds that I need to sit with it in order to get to the other side of it, and then be able to make an informed decision about what my next action is going to be after that emotion. When I read that, I don't know about anybody else, but that actually made me realize that, man, I can do anything for just 90 seconds. So if I can take 90 seconds to just sit with it, really explore the emotion, really see what it's about, feel the feels, whatever it is, then when I get to the other side of it, my decision, if I process it correctly, if I take the time to really process it, I'm likely going to respond in the proper way if I allow myself to get to the other side of it. So we have a much that we're going to be talking about as far as managing our thoughts and emotions to set us up for success, to help us to be more successful in our personal health journey, and hopefully really help some people get a handle on, in myself included, help us get a handle on what to do about the things that we do to actually derail us when we are not responding properly to our emotions. One of the things that Kelly and I talked about as we were getting prepared for this topic is that environment is a key. And I did read a little bit about that, but Kelly's going to share a little bit about the environment and how that has an effect on your emotions, how you can, put yourself in the right environments different things like that. But I'm going to allow her to expand on that portion of what we're going to talk about today.
Thank you, Yolanda. That was so good. And we are so on the same page, which I love because we can't obviously get all of our notes together. So we're going to be overlapping a little bit of the information, but for the most part, so good. I love it. So mismanaged emotions are a significant risk factor. Okay. It's as significant as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. Have you read that in the Habits of Health? That is that's a big thing to say, right? So if we are mismanaging our emotions, it's as unhealthy for us as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And I would be bold enough to even share that this may be the biggest reason people are unhealthy today, because it's so difficult to get hold of our emotions. So for instance, like she said, environment. Driving up the road, when I first started program in the first week, just driving up the road past 20 fast food restaurants made me crazy. I had to really manage my emotions. Sitting down and watching TV in the evening and all the hamburger commercials about drove me nuts. I actually hollered at my husband and said, turn that off. It's making me crazy. I'm not going to be able to do this. And so I had a lot of emotions around food in particular. Now, it can be lots of different things, but how we manage this is really can be the difference between our success or not finishing, many different things, including this program. So really big topic, really important topic. We are wired to detect negative emotions as a life-saving self-protective mechanism, okay? So sensations are a sign of awareness that an emotion is rushing through our body and is usually connected to an action. Yolanda just said this, I just said it in a little bit different terms. We can manage our emotions from above the line. We can be curious and open, or we can do it from below the line, closed off and unwilling to grow. Okay. And I went back to school when I read this again this week and realized how much work I have to do on my own emotions, not just where food is concerned, but many things. And so this is very eye-opening. So what I want you to do right now is interact with us and share some of your thoughts in the chat of maybe how you have handled emotions in the past. One thing for me is stress eating. I have one story about environment, and that's when COVID hit. I was in the midst of program. My husband is a firefighter, and he's in and out of people's homes all day long. So I also had autoimmune at one point and was very susceptible to getting every kind of disease out there. So for me, having him in and out of homes, I could stay home because at that time I was already an at-home coach doing this solely. But for him, he was in and out of houses, and boy, my mind and emotions just went for it. And I was like a toxic mess around here while he was at the station. And I immediately wanted to eat everything sugary and salty and all the things. And I was just like, what can I put in my mouth? Subconsciously, not really thinking about it. Again, I'm on the 5-in-1 program. And what I realized is that I had changed my environment because of the Life book. I had taken all the unhealthy things out of my refrigerator and my cabinets and threw them in the trash. And my kids are grown and out of the house, so I don't have anything around here to binge on that was, totally unhealthy. So for me, I know when I'm stressed, I immediately start thinking, oh gosh, I'm hungry, when I'm not really hungry because I have just eaten. And I didn't even get a chance to see what things were in the chat. Yolanda, did you see some of those go by?
Wants a glass of wine.
I don't eat. There's one.
Don't eat. When
biting fingernails. You name it. All kinds of ways we cope, right?
Yeah.
So negative emotions trigger urge to eat sugar, chocolate, salty. Probably because the hormones we release when we're stressed and we're not handling our emotions well, or turn to another bad habit of disease, such as smoking, drugs, Netflix binges. Did you ever think that those were also coping mechanisms? This is called buffering, and we'll get a little more into this as we go, but we avoid emotions, replacing it with unhealthy coping mechanisms, and we don't have to. Is that releasing anybody today? Does that like a sigh of relief for you? We don't have to make those choices. We can actually stop and we can make better choices for ourselves. But the most important thing here is that we get to choose. And for me, that was freedom, that I could learn to how to do this thing and choose. Now, sometimes it feels like I don't have a choice, but I know that I do. And that's how come I've made it, to where I have in my health. Not to say it's been an easy journey or that I don't still struggle, because just last week I struggled with this. But let me be clear. I'm going to reiterate something that Yolanda already said. Emotions are not good or bad. Okay. They're just emotion, energy in motion. Okay. These are something that are natural. These are what we were built and born and created with, and they're there for a reason. They're important. Again, it is to guide and direct us through life on what we're dealing with, how things are going and how we can handle it the best way we can. So we learn to appreciate what emotions we're feeling. Where is that manifesting in our body? Because don't you know, when you get angry, I don't know about you, but when I get angry, my shoulders get up to my ears and I get all crunched up and I can feel that tension. In fact, if I start having headaches, I start looking, Ken, my husband, is laughing at me right now. When I start feeling like my shoulders are in my ears, I start thinking, okay, what is happening? Why am I angry? What is going on with me right now? So it's a message. It sends us a message that maybe there's some things we need to deal with. Okay. And then how do we manage those emotions to create optimal health? So Yolanda, that's what I got for that section. Back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All of that was so good. And, in talking about an environment, and sometimes we try to prepare ourselves, but the reality is sometimes emotions come at unexpected times. Life happens and things happen upon us that we don't expect. And what are we going to do when we're caught off guard by our emotions, things that we don't expect to encounter on a daily basis, or just out of nowhere, something comes up, a diagnosis or just some bad tragedy or something happened that you don't expect. And these just emotions come up and you didn't get to prepare, because as human beings, we like to be on top of things. We like to be in charge of things, and we should be in control. We are going to be talking about who's in control, but sometimes things just come up unawares. And what do? I love that this particular element, and I love the totality of the Habits of Health transformational system, because really it's like a revolving thing in and of itself. It keeps sending us back. Everything builds upon each other, but it all feeds into each other. So the concession that we make for when things come upon us unawares, because it actually talks about, you should definitely do all of the exercises where it actually walks you through just really getting in touch with your emotions and feeling the feels, or whatever the case may be. But we have a tendency as human beings, if something catches us off guard, we might not want to deal with that, or we may not deal with it in the right way. So I'm going to ask in the chat, if you tell me by way of putting one in the chat, I'm going to read a question to you. If you can think of a time when you avoided an emotional situation by suppressing or repressing it, I want you to put a 1 in the chat. That you did everything you could to avoid an emotional situation by suppressing or repressing it. The response is overwhelming, because that's true. We tend to not want to deal with it. And especially when you actually have made some ground. Anybody ever made some good grounds with dealing with your emotions, not making bad choices? I know for me, it does show up. One of my reactions used to be actually showing up when in the choices I make with food, even in the midst of my health program and doing well on program, my emotions tended to derail me. And so when I got to a certain point, I was like, wow, I have mastered my emotions. I really felt like I had mastered my emotions. And there really is no such thing, because there are always going to be new emotions that arise. But then when something came up unawares and I found myself actually again eating. I'm like, oh my gosh, I backslid or whatever. It's not that. You just need to learn how to deal with it when you're caught off guard. And how do we do that? We go back to where this element suggests that we do. And Kelly talked about it, alluded to it a little bit, the stop, challenge, choose. And she talked about how element 4, her favorites are my two favorites, element 4 and also element 23. And in element number 4, it talks about stop, challenge, choose. And this element actually goes into that, doesn't detail it because it definitely is covered in great deal in element number 4, but we have to go back to that. Even when we're caught off guard and we're learning how to manage our thoughts and emotions. And we talked about it in the overview in being aware of it. So first thing that you're going to do is you're going to stop. You're going to stop. Like you don't do anything else. And then apply the 90-second rule. And during the 90 seconds, you're going to start just thinking about what you're feeling about that emotion. Like allow yourself to really sit with it and actually figure out what it is you're feeling about that emotion. And then, so when you typically have a negative emotion, it is typically going to try to drive you to do something negative, something that does not serve you well. In my case, it's eating something I should not eat. And so I'm going to stop and I'm going to process that, but then I'm going to challenge it. I'm going to challenge whether, okay, I have this negative thing that's happening. I have this negative feeling that I'm walking through right now, but I'm going to challenge whether the reaction that I'm thinking I should have right now because of this negative feeling, I'm thinking of something negative to do, but I'm going to challenge it and ask myself, does this serve me well? Does my reaction to what my emotion is right now, if I do this action, is it going to serve me well? You have to take the time to challenge it to see where it's going to lead you. Because if you realize it's not going to lead you towards your goal, if it's not going to serve you any good purpose when you challenge it, now you have a choice. It's time to choose. Now you're going to choose whether you're going to rebel against what serves you well, your purpose, or you're going to just choose to do the right thing and say, you know what? What I'm trying to do to make myself feel better about this emotion is not going to bring me any good benefit. So I'm going to choose not to react in the way that I actually want to act in this moment. You see how getting caught off guard, you don't have to derail. You don't have to, an argument, like I said, this is not just about food. This is about just different things in life, because your well-being, you don't have to stay stressed out about it. You don't have to keep stewing over it, not telling, and you don't have to suppress it. You can actually take the time to, even if no one is available, you can actually walk this process out yourself. And that's the amazing thing about Stop, Challenge, Choose. And then what do? Once you're going through all of this, the other thing that we have at our disposal, especially with our amazing program, that remember, our amazing program is 4 parts. It's not just what we're eating. When we're going through those challenges and it has the tendency to affect our personal health, we have a health coach. We have our community. You can go back and watch some of the replays of the videos to help you walk yourself through some of this. And so we have to learn how to use what's at our disposal, even when things come upon us unawares. So next, Kelly is going to talk to us about expanding your thought process about the unhealthy habits and unhealthy foods. We're going to touch on that a little bit because we know that's a big thing among our clients and how we can actually address that.
Yes, absolutely right. Stop, challenge, and choose is our best friend, right? Yes. All right, guys. So who is in control? When we manage the state of our emotions, we're in the driver's seat, right? So as we manage these in a healthy way, we get to drive the car. We are in full control. So here's something I want to do. I want to reflect back on element 7, healthy environment. And I know I talked a little bit about this already, but don't you just love how the Habits of Health sets us up? It just like Yolanda already said, it builds upon builds each area to help us have that optimal health at the end. And I just love that it literally sets us up for success.
Mhm.
So in element 7 talks about cleaning up your environment. So again, cleaned up my kitchen and pantry, replace the unhealthy foods with healthy foods, or move to a location that's out of sight, out of mind, right? Bottom shelf where you don't see it if you've got kiddos or grandkids that are coming around and have those unhealthy snacks potentially. When I've been triggered and have negative emotions, again, I stress eat. The bonus is that I have no unhealthy food in my home. So that is super helpful. But let me tell you what this does for me that's more important. Because when I have a stress response and I want to eat something sugary, chocolate, those types of things, and I don't have it, what does that cause me to do? Stop. That is what Yolanda was just talking about. It causes a stop for me to go, okay, why am I looking for that? It just causes me to reflect back, which is the most important piece of this element. Like, we can know all the things, but if we don't actually put action into place, then we're not doing the things. So obviously, so keep in mind that stress eating can be done with healthy food too. And that is something I've encountered. So what I'm looking for is that stop so that I can think about what I'm doing, what I'm feeling, and manage that, or choose not to manage it. And I can tell you, in all honesty, I have chose not to manage it. I have got out the nuts and I have ate the nuts and ate the nuts and ate the nuts until it became unhealthy. So right there this isn't just about like, oh, I didn't have the ding dong. This is also about, oh, I didn't overindulge or, or use that as my coping mechanism. So that is one thing I learned early on, is that yes, you can overdo even the healthy food if you're not managing your emotions. So it reminded me, no, you can't stop short of this part of the health program, because it is essential. And it isn't only about food. There's so many other things. So let's see here. Really, the reason we should practice and become fluent in emotion is so that we can recognize and properly manage, as Yolanda said. So how do we stay in control? We recognize. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is recognize the sensation of a trigger and know what emotion is coming up. And Dr. Anderson, we actually are on, if you don't have this life book in your hands, and I forgot to say this early on, if you don't have this in your hands, you need to get it because it's so important. I've worn mine out and probably need a new copy, but we are on page 464 for Who's in Control. Okay, and actually he talks about, let me find the page, we got some time. He actually points out some of the specific emotions that we have, which is important for you to look at. I don't know if I can find it now. So recognizing that sensation and identify on page 469 the particular emotion that's coming up. Okay, and again, another cool thing at the bottom of this is, like primary colors, we combine primary emotions with secondary ones. So we can get a whole mixed pot of craziness going on in our lives. So keep that in mind too. But those primary emotions are there. So recognizing what they are and what you're feeling is huge. Identify the emotion and the feeling. Why am I feeling like I'm feeling? Okay. What trigger was behind that? What is causing me to have this rise up? And you guys know, you've probably felt it. You either feel heat. When I get mad, oof, and if something happens that I get mad, I feel the heat flush. I feel my shoulders come up, all the things. You guys can probably relate to some of these things, right? When you feel grief, you feel it in your chest, right? When you have sadness, and I'll just give you an example because I always like to share personal stuff as well. It helps you guys to understand. So my son was stationed in Germany for over 3 years, got home a couple of months ago. He bought a house like 2 miles from me, which was excellent. I was so happy. And he got deployed to Korea. for 9 months. So I had some sadness happening in the pit of my stomach that was, triggering me, obviously. And so have had to deal with that. So I'm hoping, this makes sense. It isn't just anger, it's all the emotions. But really, Dr. Anderson points out that these feelings, these emotions will and can manifest in certain areas of the body. So if you know where certain emotions manifest, then you can more readily identify them, right? And then understanding this feeling or emotion is not good nor bad. We talked about that, but it's temporary. Like Yolanda said, if we can understand that it comes and it goes within 90 seconds, couple of minutes, then we can stop for that time. Okay. And feel the feels. That's exactly what I have in my notes. What Yolanda said, feel the feels. We need to stop being fearful of feeling the feels. It's important that we do. That is what makes our humanity so beautiful, right? That we feel the feels. And like Yolanda said, which I think is really sticking with me, is if we don't want to have the fear, but if we didn't have the fear, what then? If we didn't have the joy, what then? If we didn't have the sadness, what then? Because there's always going to be a yin and a yang. There's always going to be an opposite emotion that we do want to be feeling. So as humans, we get the full gamut and we're blessed by that, right? So yeah, feel the feels. And then the next piece is to take action. So what do you do in this time? Besides, stop, challenge, and choose? What do you do in that couple of minutes while the emotion is rising up and then passing? So some thoughts are deep breathing. If you can stop and take some deep breaths and focus on where that's manifesting in the body and just let it come, feel it, and let it go. This doesn't mean that it's going to go away permanently, and it's not bad if it doesn't. But when you have that heightened feeling of, oh gosh, I got to do something. Remember, emotion is energy in motion. So we want to take an action that's generally connected to that. Okay. So some other thoughts are drink a glass of water. Do we all need to get in our 64 ounces minimum of water? So drink a glass of water. Take a short, brisk walk. This really does help. So getting some steps in, just getting that energy moving and out of your body will help. And then lastly, pray, meditate, whatever your belief system is. Prayer is huge for me. And I do share in the chat right now, like maybe some things that you do to help you when you're having this moment, when you're passing that couple of minutes. Share some of your ideas and thoughts for everybody else. And then lastly, learn from the experience. What did this come to teach me? What can I learn from this? Can I do anything to change this in a positive way? Or is this just something that came up? And that's okay too, because like Yolanda said, life is going to happen when we least expect it. Our awareness may not be there that it's coming. So just learn from it, how you react to it. Don't expect perfection, but as you start identifying these things, you're going to get better and better at it and make the better choices for your health instead of the choices that cause us to go the other direction, right? And then lastly, what I have to share, and I'll throw it back to Yolanda, is a quote by Viktor Frankl. And he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Yolanda?
Wow. And our choice, our response, the choice of our response, our freedom is there, and our freedom is at stake. That is so powerful. And, that brings me, I'm going to talk about the lower brain, because this is a section, and I'm not going to say a whole lot about it, but I think this really kind of describes that, especially in talking about the response part of it. And just from the diagram and just looking at it. And one of the things it says that the external and internal stimulus triggers a response without it ever reaching the thinking brain. I'm going to read that again. It says the external or internal stimulus, so external things happening around you, internal, our emotions, triggers a response without it ever reaching the thinking brain. We owe it to ourselves to give ourselves time to process those emotions as we've been talking about. And it gave this breakdown where it's like at the habit maker phase of the brain, it's automatic. It's like an automatic response that we have. Like we don't think about it, we just go. There's the reactor, and it's likened to the lizard, it says. And then it's talking about the reactive or immediate part of the brain, where we make our responses comes from an emotional cue. All of that happens before we ever get to the responsive part of our brain where our discipline and our willpower lies, where we actually can think through what it is that we're dealing with, what it is that we're feeling, what it is that we're experiencing, and actually processing it out and having enough willpower to not move until we have fully thought something through in how we actually want to respond. So I think that that is so powerful in how you put that, Kelly. And so I'm going to share about emotional awareness, and we'll begin to wrap up from here. And it talked about how intelligence is awareness. Intelligence is actually taking the time to think things through, to really process what we're feeling and how we're going to respond or how we're going to react. But this goes on to talk about how the term emotional intelligence was coined a few years ago. You started hearing about emotional intelligence, and it's more than just a good sounding word. It's more than just, because I remembered when that came out, anybody ever ever get excited when they learn new words and they actually sound more intelligent, more intelligent? I do. So I remember when I heard that term and I actually liked using that. But what does that really mean? I love how this is broken down here. It says that emotional intelligence is when you're aware of your emotions, can identify them, and know how they affect you. When you're aware of your emotions, you can actually identify what the emotion is and know how they affect you. It is going to be important to know whether you're sad or you're depressed. Because if you're just sad, you can work through that. But if you're depressed, that's going to cause you to make decisions and do actions that you probably should not do from that place. It's a wasted life when you're not in touch with the actual emotion. It also goes through the different types of emotions, and the consensus is that the emotions that we typically experience and should experience as normal is anger. Anger is not necessarily a negative emotion. How we respond to anger is what makes it positive that we're going through it if we're able to really process it and actually respond accordingly. That could be a good thing, that we actually are in touch with our emotions. Talked about sadness a lot, surprise. I don't know about you, but because of how I used to handle my emotions, even good things triggered me to make bad decisions and bad choices. Surprise. It was just this week I was sharing with Kelly. This past week, I was at home and I had a lot of great things happening. I mean, just a lot of great things happening in my life and in my world, all at the same time. And at the time that I was experiencing that emotion, and surprise was one of them, at the time that I was experiencing that emotion, the normal person would think that, oh, well, if everything is good, you're probably going to do good. Not necessarily, if you're not really in touch with your emotions. So in this time of where everything is going really well in my world, I looked over and I spotted my granddaughter's plate with her leftover food. Now, that was one of the things that I had the biggest challenges with in the whole of my health journey. And she had salmon. I love salmon. She had rice. I love rice. All the things were on her plate. And I shared, this is a very transparent moment. I went over to her plate and I literally picked up a piece of salmon And I started thinking, you weigh in tomorrow. I put the salmon down. I picked up the salmon. Well, it's only one little piece of salmon. Salmon is healthy. Yeah, but if you eat this salmon, you're going to feel guilty. And now you're going to eat everything in the cupboard. I put the salmon down. So there's that thought process. I didn't have to necessarily escape whatever I was feeling, but I had to be willing to sit and process it out. By the way, I won the battle. I did not eat the salmon. I made myself salmon the next day for my lean and green. And we have to just be able to get ourselves in a place of being grounded in our emotions, becoming aware of it, knowing how it can affect us, knowing how it can affect the choices that we make, and just being willing to be present with those emotions is a good thing. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Kelly to give some final thoughts and engage the audience, if you will. I hope this was good to you. I know it really is encouraging me and challenging me to go even a lot deeper. I don't always win the battle, but I'm winning the battle more and more every single week of my journey as I'm learning. So I hope that this helps you the same.
Oh, Yolanda, I absolutely love that story and that truth. And I put it in the chat. It's so, so true. And, you know, everyone, we are all dealing with emotions. There's no one who doesn't. So understanding that sometimes we handle those in good ways and sometimes in not so good ways. But the whole point is to learn along our journey. And like Yolanda said, become better and better. And if we're pursuing better every day, we're going to get better. It's just how it works, right? So thank you so much for allowing us to share on this topic. Again, one of our favorite topics. I would encourage you to get back in and study more on it, get in the life book, fill out the actual pieces that he asks you to look at so that you can truly engage with yourself on maybe a current emotion that you're feeling. So it will even deepen your understanding more. And we do have a few minutes. We could have a couple of people come off of mute or raise your hand, and you can share if you like. And then I did want to mention as well, Dr. Anderson does have a conscious leadership forum that he does for free. I don't have the thing, but you can Google it, Dr. A's Conscious Leadership Forum. And he has a whole series on mindset. Really incredible trainings that he does. I believe they're once a month, and then you subscribe, you get an email telling you when the next one is coming. But he's really done a lot of work in this area, and that could be very, very helpful to you as well. This is actually going to be not a book, Angela, but it's a video that he does live, and he has audience participation in that as well. And I believe it's done once a month. So Conscious Leadership Forum by Dr. Anderson is what it is. And I'll put that in here in a minute. So do we have anyone who wants to share today? We have about 10 minutes. Maybe share some emotions you're feeling, or if you don't want to get that deep. You know, a lot of people, I have a lot of clients who bow out at this point because no one wants to deal with emotions. I'm not going to lie. This is the last thing I wanted to deal with, but I've really learned that it's helped me to grow as a person, as a professional, in my own health journey, to even go farther by delving in. And but I'm telling you, it's not a comfortable topic that we picked, Yolanda. It is the hardest one, I think, to discuss. It's the hardest one to get people to open up about and to coach people on and to deal with ourselves. And it's a tough one to teach. It's a very long chapter. So, all right, guys. Well, I guess that is what we have. Yolanda, did you have anything else?
Yes, I'll just go ahead and close up by saying, you know, one of the thought questions that when it comes to our emotions and the decisions that we're making and responses that we have as a result of them, one of the questions that has been coming up in my mind and trying to process with some of my clients is that, like, what is it that's causing you to not allow yourself to win? And our emotions will literally back us up against the wall, paralyze us, make us not really want to, face them because we don't want to feel what they bring sometimes. And that really is a symptom of a bigger thing, I think. And it's really like a sabotage thing of just not allowing yourself to win in your health. Your emotions is such an extreme part of your health. I would say, just based on what we're learning this week, that it really drives, I think, every aspect of our health. It really can either set the tone for us to improve and really move forward, or for us to end up quickly spiraling downward or moving backward. So ask yourself that question that as we're getting ready to close out here. I would say ask yourself that question from time to time when you end up making a response that is not favorable as a result of your emotion. Just ask yourself, okay, why am I having trouble letting myself win at this, win in life, win in my health journey, win in whatever it is that I'm trying to accomplish? And maybe that will help you to make some better choices and have better responses, if you will. I'm just seeing your responses in the church. I'm saying in the church, in the chat, and how this has impacted you. I am so glad. This is definitely a much needed topic, something to talk about. And I just hope that you will apply the things that we learned. And if you don't have the life book, like Kelly said, I'm telling you, get it, get it, get it. I was not one that used to harp that you need the life book, you need the life book. But since we've started this coffee with clients and we've been just expounding on each of the elements, I realize how much the answer to many of the challenges that I had along the way in my journey could have been helped by the things that I learned in the book so far. And so I highly encourage you that you get that. Again, if this is your first time on Coffee with Clients, you're a brand new client, you can certainly find all of the replays on the Coffee with Clients YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe so that you can get the notification when the new episodes are uploaded. And we are so excited that we're coming to the end of this. However, we still got work to do. We just go through it again and again and again. So if nothing else, we are going to say goodbye to you. We'll see you again next Friday, same time, same place, right here. And be blessed. I hope that all of you have a successful journey.